That's right. It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Makes me like.
So today we have Andy Bush, and he's going to talk to us about container gardening. And take it away, Andy.
A movie.
Not that I'm aware of. This evening, I'm going to talk about some techniques that I use for tropical container gardening. I'll cover seed germination, potting mixes, the containers that I use.
Do you know what this on the side is
potting up
about?
to intermediate containers, potting up to final containers, and repotting the final containers. Finally, I'll talk about maintenance of indoor plants, including insect pests that I've experienced all the time. I'm not going to claim that everything I'm doing is right. However, a lot of what I'm doing is the result of years of trial and error.
Okay.
A lot of my plants are trees, so I need to give seeds lots of room. These days, I use straight-walled 2-liter cola bottles for planting seeds. These are recycle #1 PETE versus the #2 HDPE bottles or bottles with curved sides. I recommend those. There are several advantages to cola bottles. They are new, so you don't have to worry about contamination. They're cost-free because we're drinking the cola anyway. I've found that clear plastic does not degrade in sunlight, probably because it's transparent. If the light goes straight through, it doesn't interact with the plastic. Translucent bottles, such as milk jugs, do get brittle over time in sunlight. Don't use these unless it's for very short-term use. First, I strip the label off so I can see the roots as they develop. I fill the bottle halfway with water, slosh it around, and drain it to get rid of any leftover cola. I cut the top off the bottle. Let's see, that's not it. There it is. Cut the top off the bottle and punch a hole with a sharp-pointed knife and cutting the rest off with scissors. Cut just below the curve in the top.
Okay. Huh. It's pretty nice.
Fill the bottle with potting mix. Tamp it down really good by hitting it on the bottom. That alleviates any voids. Let's see. Oh yes, and I twist the knife, punching holes in the bottom. I use my handy dandy pocket knife for this. Punch holes in the bottom at each lobe and then give it a twist. A thin knife works best for this. Drainage is key, as we have all learned in our master gardening class. I fill the bottles with potting mix and tap the bottom to settle it. I used to sift the potting mix through a 1/4-inch screen before filling the bottles, but I have recently decided this doesn't really help anything and might slow drainage. As you know, I'll say it again, fast drainage is key in container gardening. I plant seeds 1 or 2 seed diameters down, cover with the potting mix and water thoroughly. Make sure your seeds don't float to the top. Depending on the plant, it can take a few months to a year. This lavender is about 1 year old now. In fact, I had them out here in the demonstration garden there for a while.
Was that from a cutting?
No, that was from seed.
That was from seed.
Yes,
And that's a year old?
it is now. Yes. Well, I planted them last February, something like that, and they were this tall by the time our plant sale started. And so they just weren't big enough to sell, and so I took them home, and now I've got 4 or 5, what did I give you? Something like that. And I'll bring them to the plant sale. It can take a few months to a year for it to outgrow the plastic bottle. And if you look very closely, you can see the roots on the inside of the container.
Just pass it.
Okay, just pat, yeah, pass it around.
Okay. Pretty nice road. Oh, spike.
Even though the bottles are straight wall, and when I say straight wall, I mean straight up and down in this direction.
Pretty cool.
I usually have to cut slices, cut in the slices to get the plant out. If you have a conical shaped pot, that's not a problem because you can, it's all just right there. The angles are proper so that it just pops right out of the bottom. Sometimes they get stuck, but it's usually not too bad. After you use them, you can still rinse them out and recycle them. And I'm sure that everybody knows about the recycling bin at the Sevierville Public Works Department on Catlett Road, just off Robert Henderson Road. Any questions so far?
Andy, why do you have to use the straight and not to get them out? Is that what the curve
Yeah.
problem is?
Well, yeah, first of all, these are gonna be hard to cut.
It's a lot thicker.
Because it's usually a thicker plastic. And yeah, the thing about cutting them down like this is you can see where the roots are. You have to use a fairly narrow blade pair of scissors to cut down, but you can cut and avoid the roots as you can see on that. So again, that's the other reason for having a transparent pot. Some of you may remember the experiment I conducted in the demonstration garden with the 2 stacker gardens. I filled one with Miracle Grow. I filled the other one with Stay Green, just to compare the 2 potting mixes. Then I planted both gardens with exactly the same plants at the exact same levels. I wanted to compare the growth of the plants to see if I could tell much difference between the 2 potting mixes. The first year, the results were pretty much the same. The second year, I thought Stay Green outperformed the Miracle Grow. That might almost sound like an endorsement of Stay Green. However, I have since come to realize that Stay Green is a private label product. This means that the potting mix you get this year may not be consistent with the potting mix you get next year or last year. I have noticed obvious differences in the Stay Green formula over time. It used to have a little green slow release fertilizer nodules or little balls in it. Those aren't in there anymore. That's the most obvious difference. I have in mind repeating my experiment with some different brands. The co-op carries several different brands of potting mix. Okay, after the plants graduate from the cola bottles, I usually pot them up in these tall black plastic containers here. I bought a couple of dozen of these from the hydroponics store in Maryville. These I do reuse, but let's see, oops. Lost my place. These I do reuse, but I let them sit empty for some time before washing them out thoroughly with bleach. Note that these are made of a fairly substantial thick black plastic. And again, the black plastic does not tend to degrade in sunlight. And they're not the same flimsy plastic that most nursery pots are made of. They do have large drainage holes in the bottom. This you might think is a good thing until you start watering and your potting mix starts running out of the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I decided, well, I'll use some landscape fabric in the bottom of the pots.
Keep it up there.
And then I found out that yes, this will prevent the potting mix from falling out of the holes. But the problem then becomes the really fine particulate matter in the potting mix will then kind of merge into this, forms a watertight seal, and you're drain, and once you're back to no, once again, you're back to no drainage. I killed my last 2 chocolate trees by having this in the bottom. Now, we don't use rocks anymore. And you know, that used to be the wisdom was you line the bottom layer with rocks, so that would keep your potting mix from coming out the bottom. Well,
Why don't we use rocks?
I use rocks. I
like rocks.
well, you're taking up a lot of the room that you have for roots in the rocks. There's no
But if you
there's
only
no
put this
plant.
one,
Well, okay, the thinner layer of rocks that you use, the less the less potting mix they'll retain. So, okay, well, my solution is hardware cloth. Okay, hardware cloth is galvanized wire. And the reason they call it cloth is because it's woven together, sort of. It's actually really welded, but anyway, they call it hardware cloth. It comes in great big rolls. The one that I've got is like 4 feet wide and I don't know, 100 feet long. I use a lot of this stuff. I use a lot of this stuff. A 6-inch piece is good for these.
How many holes?
And it will prevent the hardware cloth. The landscape fabric from clinging to the bottom and forming that watertight seal or nearly watertight seal.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I do is I take a square, fold it again, and cut the corners off. And then I make 2 cuts towards the one folded, the corner with the one fold in it. What you end up with is an octagon with flaps all the way around. And these flaps you can then tuck together as you put it into the bottom of the pot, and it will kind of go up the sides, and that way you won't have the that way it will retain the potting mix without retaining the water, and that's what you want. So hardware cloth first, and landscape fabric second, and I'm not going to bother to do all that. Okay. Okay. And I use 10 snips. What do I do with my 10 snips? Yep. I use 10 snips to cut the hardware cloth. And if you want to snip along one wire, and that way you don't leave a lot of needles sticking out that will catch on clothing and arms and hands and fingers and everything else. That just turns into a really ugly mess. Okay. Depending on the species and how fast they grow, trees can stay in these intermediate pots for 1 to 3 years. If you see roots appear at the drainage holes, you have let them go too long. Probably past due for potting up to the next container. These intermediate size containers are already fairly unwieldy. I do tend to use my plant roller, plant mover with these, because this is going to be 25, 30 pounds, something like that, if it's wet. And but anything up to about 16 inches works pretty well. 18.
Yeah, where did you get that?
I don't remember, that might have been a gift from Patty. Christmas gift or something. And the thing about it is I move all of my plants out of the sunroom in the spring, usually end of May, and move all of my plants back in middle of October, something like that. I like to get them outside for various reasons. Chief of which is I have diamond hard well water. And so when I'm watering, there's a certain amount of mineral buildup that goes into the potting mix. As I bring them out for the summertime, the acid rain will wash all that out. And so we're back by October, we're back to zero and hopefully, I don't know that the minerals have really ever hurt anything. It's not salt. I mean, they're chemically they're salts, but they're not sodium hydroxide or sodium fluoride. Which is a really bad one. Okay, so after they graduate from that, then I usually have one of these. I'm gonna go ahead and put it up here on my table so everybody can see it. I build these rolling plant movers, rolling plant platforms, and I build one for each pot because it's permanently mounted in there. I build these starting at any pot that's 18 inches or bigger. 16 I can still usually handle with the rolling plant mover, but 18 or bigger, and they're just you tip this thing back and it wants to roll off of the holder on here, and so it's and that gets very old very fast because I'm moving stuff out all the way to the driveway and sometimes to the end all the way to the end of the driveway. So I build these for anything 18-inch big or bigger. This one is a 20-inch pot. Measuring the diameter, outside diameter of it. And I've got several of the 18-inch, several 20s, some 22s, and a couple of 24-inch pots. They're actually to the point in a 24-inch pot where it's difficult to get it up over the threshold. And I'm on one level. The driveway, the back porch, and the sunroom are all at the same level, but there's still just that threshold that I need to get over. And sometimes I have to lift one side and pull, and then lift the other side and push. So anyway, okay, I build these from preservative treated 2x stock, and you can see that there are 2x4s running across the top, kind of forming a box, and then there's 2x something underneath. Okay, with a 20-inch pot, I would get two pieces of 2x10. So 10 and 10 is 20, and what that does though is that leaves a nice drainage channel down the middle right here.
Yeah, you did. You did.
So you can drill holes in the bottom of your pot, and you'll have to do that because most of them don't come pre-drilled. And then you can, once again, here's a piece of hardwood cloth that I cut a circle out of. And now these I match more to the size of the pot. And then of course the hardware cloth goes in on top of that. I use galvanized carriage bolts around the outside where it mostly stays dry or dries off. For inside, I use stainless steel because otherwise they will rust over time, and that's unavoidable. So 316 stainless steel works pretty well, and I've got actually got the bill of materials right here, and I've got handouts with the bill of materials for making these. But you can readily tell the galvanized stuff from the stainless stuff. This is galvanized. This is just a shinier metal. But stainless and galvanized is what you're looking for. Yes.
On the, I can't see it from here, but so some of the holes are for the bolts, the rest of the holes are for drainage. Did you drill in the bottom?
Yes.
But does the pump sit flat on the 2x10s or is it raised? If it sat flat, is it still able to drain?
Yes. Let me see if I can tilt it so that you
No.
can see it in the bottom.
Oh, that's pretty.
I've got drainage hole drilled in the top along that center channel.
Okay, you just drill, the drainage holes are all in the center channel, so you don't
Yes.
have, those are the only ones you have, okay.
Well, everything that I've done, like I said, it's all been trial and error. At first, I was actually drilling holes all the way through the boards. That's not really necessary when you have great big, inch or bigger holes for the drainage down the center channel. But anyway, they call these 2x10s. They're not really 2x10. They're actually 1.5 by 9.5 or 9 1/4 or something like that. And that's why you end up with, even though it's 20 inches across, you end up with a center channel.
How big you drill a hole, but you can bust one.
That one was a saw.
What?
One of the saw hole drillers that you mount to a drill.
It works on ceramic?
This isn't ceramic. I don't have any ceramic.
Okay.
They're too-
What is the material, plastic of some sort?
Yes, it is a
Okay.
plastic. And black resin, again, and I've had pots bigger than this made of the colored plastic. And the colored plastic is as bad as the milk jugs. It will turn brittle and break over time.
Oh, really?
So what you're looking for, I'll flip it over this way. What you're looking for is that even though this may be painted on the outside, this is
Right.
not colored plastic, this is paint. And it's painted over the black resin. And that's okay. So fiberglass, this black resin, plastic, whatever, both of those are fine. They're strong enough to be able to be drilled and move around and not break. But I avoid the ceramic pots because I don't think I can ever mount them to a base.
Break a lot, or break out the drill.
Yeah. And who knows what they're made of, so. Anyway. Okay, the other thing that I do, okay, here, I use drill, a driver, sometimes the socket wrench, crescent wrench, to drill all of the pilot holes. We're drilling through quite a distance here, so you need a long shank drill bit. And I also use, not all of them are carriage bolts or used through holes. Some of them are up into are just regular lag. These are called lag screws. And some of those, anyway, there's 4 holes in each wheel base. And I just reuse those. This is a mover's dolly from Harbor Freight. You can buy one mover's dolly with 4 wheels, and they're perfectly adequate wheels for about the price of 1 wheel at the big box stores. And so you do want the ones that swivel, because once it gets heavy, swiveling is very important. I call these my jigs. And when you're putting this all together, the jigs go on the inside here, the whole, and then I clamp down the 2x4s on the jig, and I actually build all of this upside down, but, you clamp down like that, hold everything together, and that way you can drill your pilot holes and everything, and, not have it come apart while you're drilling. 'Cause like I said, you're drilling quite a distance all the way through on some of these carriage bolts. These are carriage bolts. They don't need a washer on the top. They only need a washer on the bottom. But if I'm sending a carriage bolt through to the wheel base, then that's my washer. I don't need a washer for those. So actually 3 carriage bolts per wheel. 2 go through to the wheelbase itself, and then 2 toward in the center, and that keeps the thing from dropping out in the bottom. I've never had one come apart. They're fairly sturdy, and so they need to be in order to be rolling around with a very heavy plant twice a year. So I have started. I started making these years ago. I didn't used to paint them, thinking that, oh, well, it's preservative treated. It's meant for ground contact. Nope. I paint the inside. The inside I paint with Flex Seal. And Phil Swift was doing a very good job in his advertising. So I paint the inside with Flex Seal. That forms a fairly substantial rubber layer between the pot and the wood. I try to only drill into that center channel. In fact, I turn the whole thing upside down and drill through the center channel into the pot. And then the outside I paint with house paint. I chose this color to match the bricks in the sunroom, more or less. But anyway, so let's see, I covered the jigs, I covered all this. And I have some bills of materials for anybody who wants to attempt this. I only made a few because I figured not everybody in here is gonna be building all that stuff. If you want, if we need more, I can print more.
Do
Or
the
put
wheels,
it in the magazine.
do those wheels have the stop on them, so they don't just keep rolling out to the street and down the hill?
No, like I said, my driveway and porch and
You're
garage
level.
are pretty level. They do make them with the brakes, with the little step lever
Yeah.
brake on them. I have bought those. They're even more expensive than
Yeah,
just the regular
I didn't
wheels.
know if those dollies had it or not.
No, these don't. These are pretty low rent wheels.
The robot.
Wait, the robot.
That's my way.
You guys.
And these, I think that these nuts are metric. They're the kind of nuts that are intended to go on and then grab. So, they kind of have that rounded side on the nut. But I just get the power driver and just turn it on and turn them off. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I covered these. What else? Bad plastic. Okay, as I said, I put the hardware cloth followed by the landscape fabric and those as well. Okay, when I'm filling the container, I usually fill to the level. Okay, I will test to see how far down of how far, of how much potting mix I need to put in. And you measure based on where the level is, the potting mix will settle over time. And so you look to see where the level of the soil is in here and use that to compare with the level of the lip, of the container. And not just where, you don't want to just make these two even. You may end up like this, because the level of the soil in the intermediate container has dropped. Anyway, so I filled this, press it down, give it a good tamping, because there can be voids in there, and voids don't really do you a whole lot of good unless they make it settle more. Fill it up to the level that I need, take the plant out, put it in the container, fill in the sides, again, tamping down as I go. It's kind of a judgment call as to how much tamping to do. I try not to do too much, but not enough isn't good either. So, like I said, it's just kind of a judgment call. Okay, so this what I call it. I call the final container for the plant. And again, right now, my largest containers are 24-inch diameter. And actually I got one that's a little bit taller than this. And 24 inches in diameter. For those, of course, I'd use two 2x12s as the base. The potting mix, all the potting mixes that I've tried so far have a major component is peat moss. Peat moss degrades over time. And so again, over years, the soil level will drop as the peat moss is consumed. And so at some point, you've got a plant with 6 inches of space above it, and it's time to repot. Well, what do? Well, you take it out of this pot. I turn this over I lay out a tarp, turn this over on its side, and try to wiggle the plant apart from the container as best I can, because there's no avoiding it. I mean, it takes more and more frequent waterings as well as the soil level drops. And you want to give it some fresh potting mix somehow. So, like I said, I dump it over on its side on top of the tarp, pull the plant out, wiggle the plant out. And then, well, actually, the first thing I do is I measure to see how much the soil level has dropped. And so if it's dropped by, say, 6 inches, then I know I'm going to need to fill in 6 inches at the bottom of the pot before I try to put the plant back in. Okay, so I fill the pot up to the measurement of the drop level, leaving about an inch or so of space at the top. And then again, put the plant back in. As you can see, these again are somewhat conical in shape, narrower at the bottom than they are at the top. And so when the plant goes back in, it's higher, and so there's going to be a gap around the outside. And so again, you're filling in potting mix around the outside, pushing it down, tamping it down. But you've got a new layer then of potting mix at the bottom, and around the sides. It's, temporarily, at least, the plant's going to have some new potting mix to grow into. Okay, maintenance. Okay, do that. Okay, Like I said, I monitor the weather, but I usually don't take my tropicals out until late May, and then I start bringing them in around the middle of October. My most successful plants are probably my coffee trees. They really don't have much in the way of insect pests around here. None of the local pests know anything about coffee. So, that helps a lot. The only times I've seen like a grasshopper chew a piece of a leaf off, and that was about it. It would have to be something that's infested with some bad insect that would then migrate over to the coffee trees. I've seen that once or twice, but just haven't had very much trouble with them at all. And with good year-round sunlight, they will yield lots of cherries. I'm going to get probably harvested a quart or more of cherries off of each plant. And of course, the cherry is bigger than the coffee bean inside, and the green coffee beans are smaller than the roasted coffee beans you see in the grocery store. They swell up as they roast. But even in total shade, they make great houseplants. They're bright, have a deep green color, very shiny, naturally shiny leaves. They do need to be pruned every so often because they will outgrow your house if you let them. I've had pretty good luck with super dwarf bananas. I've gotten those to produce little bananas. It's a super dwarf Cavendish banana. The bananas themselves are about the size of your thumb, but it tastes exactly like the Cavendish bananas that you buy in the grocery store. Let's see, Barbados cherries, members of the ginger plant family, such as cardamom and turmeric. I know we've had some turmeric people who had turmeric before. One of the problems I have are scale bugs on citrus. Now, whatever the local scale bugs are, they love citrus. So orange, lemon, lime, grapefruit, etc. If you buy one of those, be prepared for citrus. The scale bugs get on the papaya as well. My other problem is aphids on capsicum peppers. Now, these are the red and green peppers that you see. If you're growing them indoors year round, the aphids will get on them and they love them. And now what's really weird about the scales is, of course, a lot of times I'm just either taking a toothbrush or fingers and rubbing them off. And if they have scales, then I take them to one spot on the driveway when I take them outside, because I don't want them spreading scales from one plant to the next. What's weird is that a few weeks after I bring them outside, the scales dry up and die. Now, I don't know whether the ants are finding them. I know the ants will get on the trees with the scales. But usually you think of that as being that they're going after the honeydew that the scales produce. And if you see that black mold, that's from the honeydew, from either the scales or the aphids. Take your pick. But for some reason, the scales die, and I really don't have a problem with them until the following late winter, spring, that sort of thing. So what do I do about the pest bugs? Insecticidal soap. I've never needed anything stronger than this. And as we always say, read the label, read the label, read the label. I mix it up according to the label direction, and it works pretty well, at least for a while. I may not be applying it as often as I possibly should, but I just hate to spray anything inside the house. I've got a mother-in-law with COPD, and she does not need to be activated with whatever I'm spraying in the sunroom. one other thing, if you have cats, cats will readily recognize your potting mix in your plants as kitty litter. So what I have taken to doing is I will cut a big circle of the hardware cloth and put that at the soil surface. And if the cat can't scratch, it won't poop. So, that's been my solution with cats. Never had that, when we had a dog, we never had, the dog never showed any interest in the plants at all. And it's only been the cat. Now she'll sleep on top of the hardwood cloth. And the olive tree. She can't scratch into the potting mix, and of course, the hardwood cloth just lets the water go right straight through, so. That's no difficulty there.
Andrew, do you have any problems in the summertime when we're outside with feral cats?
Have not, no. We have had feral cats, but I've never seen them go after I mean, there's plenty of other places to dig. And it's only been when the plants are inside that our cat has shown any interest in them, so. Let's see, I did have a tree frog that came indoors with the plants one year. And it survived because it survived the winter. I don't know what it ate. I don't know what it drank. I mean, I don't routinely spray the plants. But I did have a frog that came indoors one year, and it was still alive when I moved the plants out. Any other questions? Yeah.
When you bring them in the fall, do you spray them with the insect killer before bringing them in the house?
Usually I take the garden, I take the hose, and it's got one of the little dial sprayers on the end of it, and I put it on the jet, and I'm not really worried about whether any leaves are loose and fall off. I spray them as thoroughly as I can, but I usually don't spray unless I'm seeing bugs.
The gnats, I don't think they're really.
Fungus gnats.
Oh, are they gnats?
Well, they call them fungus gnats.
They're awful.
Yes, they are.
Well, and so I read that if you put pebbles down, it kind of, they don't like it. They do. They like pebbles, just fine.
What they really like is humidity, and so you may be overwater. I have had years where the fungus gnats are really bad.
Yeah.
Now I'm on a much more strict watering schedule, Mondays and Thursdays. And that's
Well, that could be because they're not in my succulents or anything that don't get
Yeah.
watered very often. but
right.
My ficus and.
Yeah, too much humidity in the soil. They really like it when it's kind of soggy.
Right.
So.
So you really let it dry out.
Yeah, let it dry out. Of course, I'm getting full sun, and I've got windows on 3 sides and then glass ceiling. So it's like it's and I actually have to have a vent fan up there, and some parts of the year I'll open the outer doors and let the vent fan pull all the hot air out. But it's actually on the system with the air conditioning system. There's 2 vents in the sunroom. And for the summer, once I've taken the plants out, then I close those vents off, and there's actually a damper inside that vent pipe duct that I can turn off. So I'm not blowing, not trying to air condition a sunroom that in the summertime. Well, like any greenhouse, it turns into an easy bake oven out there. I have interior doors, and I just close those. And we pretend we don't have a sunroom in the summertime. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did I have enough handouts for everyone that wants to build containers, or do I need to? Need to print more? Okay. Extras are fine.
Give you some guys. Thank you. I didn't know that.
Oh, and on the back of, the tools that I use in general indoor gardening, but y'all probably already know about those, so.
How big is your son? Must be big.
Sunroom is, it's actually bigger than the one we had on the old house. It is 27 feet by almost 12 feet.
It's almost as big as our greenhouse now.
Yes.
Yeah, cause it's like, what, 18 or 20 by 28? If I remember correctly.
Then I guess my sunroom was a little bigger because it's 27 feet long.